Look, I can't believe it's already been a week. That's Romania Black. I was sitting here going, wow, it's actually been a full week since episode 1 came out. And I was like, oh, wow, that week went by really quickly, which I like my summer to go by slow because I like to enjoy it because once school starts back up, it's just like... But I'm not gonna be sad this week because I've been waiting for episode 2 for a while. So, we're on episode 2 of The Summer Hikaru Died, and episode 1 was a trip. It was such a trip. There was a lot going on. Hikaru is dead already, as far as we know, and his body's been taken over by this entity that I suspect is a forest demon that's come down and used him as a host and is now in the village, and people in the village know that he's a demon, or they suspect that Hikaru has now been, is now encapsulating this demon. We don't know for sure yet, but I didn't talk about this in the discussion last week, but I was talking with Plor, who is the moderator of this series, and we were talking about, the series taking place in summer, and I was like, yes, the summer theme is so on brand, and I was talking about how it seems so perfect that this is done in the summer because it's, when romance reaches a fever pitch, when spring blooms into love, and that's what summer is. But it's like the peak before fall when things start to die off, and it feels really symbolic. But I really liked the idea. Plor brought this up as we were talking about episode 1 because it hadn't come out on YouTube or Patreon yet. But they were saying that, in summer there's heat and you can't hide from it. And I was like, yeah, we've gotten a lot in episode 1 of like bright lights and exposure. And it's like, you can't hide in the summer. You're just exposed. And in episode 1, there's all of these moments with Hikaru and Yoshiki in it where they're just like in the sunlight. And we were talking about how Plora was saying it's kind of different from a usual horror movie because a lot of horror movies delve in darkness, and that's where the scary stuff is in the corners and the shadows. And we got a little bit with that with the old lady in episode 1 with that, but a lot of this, the horror is right out there in the open. Like from the get-go, Hikaru is like, I'm not Hikaru, I'm something else, posing as him, and Yoshiki's like, and then we had all the entanglements of, Yoshiki trying to deal with his feelings for Hikaru. Does this monster have feelings for Yoshiki? What do we do with this? There's this other guy, Tanaka, who works for an organization that seems like maybe they're exorcists, maybe they're Ghostbusters. But he's been somewhat tasked with finding Hikaru and exterminating him, and that's gonna be a thing. So I'm like, oh my god, what do we do with this? But hopefully you all loved my dive in episode 1. There was so much to talk about with the symbolism, so much to get into, and I am so excited for this episode. It's just, I cannot wait. Before we get started, though, I want to give a shout out over to our philanthropy tier over on Patreon, to thank all of the patrons. Thank you all so much, whether you're in the $1 tier, the $5 tier, whether you're in the philanthropy tier and you're donating $10, or if you're doing like the $50 commissions. There's only 4 of those, and they are taken up like that every month. So I am blessed. Thank you all so much. I don't know what to do with my gratefulness, but I do want to give a shout out to the philanthropy tier because that's one of the perks they get in my videos. So thank you to Alex Cornejo, to Be Happy, to Bisa, as well as Damage3245. Done Huckleberry saying thanks to. To Devorin, to Danger Zone, as well as Destiny Marie, Devorin, Dana, Ichu, Eric, Elcuno, Elfreya, Fisho, Ghostly Turnip, Linden, Liam Polzel, as well as Matthew Palfinier, Murphew, Willie Morris, Sunspots, Shimayama, and Translucent Men. And if I missed any new people, they'll be in this lineup as well. But thank you all so much. I deeply appreciate it. All of my love. Okay. So yeah, I'm really excited, but I don't know. Last episode, a woman died because she was suspicious of Hikaru being this entity or whatever it is. We don't get confirmation yet, so I'm like, okay, but we think it might be this forest demon spirit, Onuki or Nonuki. We'll see how that goes. But she knew too much, and she had to go because this entity, as Hikaru has decided he likes Yoshiki, and is where that's gonna lead, I don't know. So we're going to have to see now that Tanaka's involved what we get with this. But thank you all so much for watching with me. I've stayed away from spoilers. I've done really good. I've been a good person with spoilers this week, so we're just gonna dive in and see what we get. So, with that being said, we're gonna dive into The Summer Hikaru Died, episode 2, and we're gonna do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Like turn around with my mug of coffee, except it's a root beer, and be like, so, and it'd be like one of those mystery murder theaters, like the two young men were growing closer, but didn't realize the danger that was underfoot ahead of them. What? This episode, no, y'all don't understand. Y'all don't understand. I'm obsessed with this show. I am obsessed with this show. You all have been recommending The Summer Hikaru Died to me for a long time. Before this anime was even announced, you're like, you need to read The Summer Hikaru Died. And I was like, well, maybe if they make it into an anime, and here we are. I feel like anybody who's watched my channel knows I like a handful of things more than I like most things. And that includes BL, mystery, shock factor, and symbolism, and you just took all those and put them into a blender and just said, here you go, here's your smoothie, and I'm drinking my juice, Shelby, because this series is amazing. I have so many thoughts. I kept wanting to discuss in the middle of the episode, and it kept going on to new things. I was like, oh no, we got to keep on track. We have to keep watching. And then I was like in my head going, I can't wait to discuss this. I can't wait to discuss this. I can't wait to discuss this. And here we are. So, before we start, we need to talk about cicadas. We need to talk about cicadas, because I was like, cicadas. They focused on that a lot in this series. Anime tends to focus on cicadas a lot, which, you know, I grew up in the Midwest, rural United States. We had a cicada awakening last year where there were thousands of cicadas making noise like this all outside my house. And so, yes, I understand cicadas are representative of summer, they're representative of youth, but let's get into some mythology with them, because I kept thinking in my mind, I was like, I've read about cicadas before when I was in grad school. What did I read about cicadas in? Phaedrus with Socrates. That's where we're going today. Whiteboard Coon's gonna get a workout today, but he's okay with it. So let's talk about cicadas. Cicadas in mythology. There's a lot of mythology tying back to cicadas, and obviously as someone who is a Euro mutt, I'm going to be referring to a lot of European history with cicadas, so those of you that are going to point out the Japanese symbolism of them, feel free to do so. But we're going to focus a little bit on cicadas because I think that there is some tie into this episode and possibly series as a whole as well. So Aristotle was fond of eating cicadas, which do with that what you will, and described them in Historia Animalium. Said that we know he was aware about their periodic lifestyle, their life cycles. They are tied to the themes of resurrection. They have this progression from a winged form to the winged form, their song that they sing. Aristotle, according to the wiki, I'm drawing from that because I didn't want to get my books out from grad school, attributing to disseminating Greek culture cicada symbolism in terms of resurrection and immortality, although their liminal aspect and propensity incited admiration before Aristotle, and we all know this. Aristotle just wrote it down and talked about it. So in Phaedrus, I did read Phaedrus in grad school, and in Phaedrus, there was a dialogue by Plato, which describes the sage Socrates and his student of rhetoric Phaedrus engaging in a repartee of idyllic discussions, you know, talking about the chorus of cicadas. And basically, cicadas are not just decorative and not just to set a mood, they add a profound metaphor to different various narratives. The wiki describes it as transcendent musical motifs and liminal aspects as discussed between the dialogue of Socrates and Phaedrus. However, what I want to get into is in Phaedrus, they talk about the four kinds of mania. 4 kinds of mania. And if any word is to describe this series, it's probably mania. So if you are curious, like, mania? What is mania? Mania is basically derived from the Greek word, I'm going to try to say this right, manisthai, which literally means to go mad. So if you're thinking of song, she's a maniac on the floor. So mania itself is considered to be a type of otherness that they talk about in Phaedrus that was bestowed by a deity upon a vessel, which, let's break that down. So describing not only the idea of to go mad, which if you're referring back, I've watched some Donmai now, and in Donmai they use the phrase lunatic. They tie it to the moon, but a lunatic is a veiled reference to someone being homosexual. So they tie that madness to the idea of you're not normal and that you're not, in tune with the heteronormative societal expectation, which kind of phases into this. But with mania, there's this idea of, I kind of like the idea of otherness bestowed by a deity. I kind of like that because, and we're going to add upon a vessel. I kind of like that because on the one hand, it's like usually and I am Christian, but I get frustrated at a lot of people within my religion because a lot of times people will go against homosexuality saying that it's against God, and I'm like, have you read the Bible? But anyway, we're not going to talk about that in this. But the idea, I do like the idea of this otherness being bestowed by a higher power, which mainly puts it in a more positive light than negative light, and I like that. But anyway, the idea of otherness bestowed by a deity upon a vessel very much transcribes into this episode with Yoshiki, and the idea of an otherness being bestowed by a deity, which could be the deity residing in Hikaru. We'll talk about it in this episode. But there's 4 different kinds of this mania I want to talk about in this episode that is connected to this thought. The first kind is, there's 2 translations of it, and I'm going to give you both translations. There is prophetic, or this idea of mediumship, which we're going to talk about. So prophetic, or mantic, which is also mediumship, that is connected to Apollo. So the god Apollo, or Apollon. So I'm going to put a little N in parentheses there. Then there is the second one, which is poetic. Poetic, or what is known as the ritual trance, which is also called telestic. And it is tied to the god Dionysus. Always think of grapes in the wine. Then, I'm sorry. I'm wrong on that one. Poetic is not that one. We're going to change that one. Not poetic. The ritual trance and telesthetic one is cathartic, I believe. Yes, cathartic. I know, Huck. He's like, play with me, bitch. Then we have poetic. And poetic is called the same in both translations, but it is also tied to a musical passion, which we're going to talk about this third one quite a bit, the musical passion, and that is tied to the muses, which is going to relate to our cicada here in a little bit, so we're going to talk about that one here. And then we finally have the last one, which is erotic. And as soon as I saw this page, I was like, oh, we're going to tie in erotic. We're going to tie in erotic. Erotic, which is passion and love, and obviously connects to Aphrodite and Eros. Cue your Yuri on Ice soundtracks. So yes, we're going to tie into all of those. And in regards to mania, Plato wrote, "Our greatest blessing comes to us by way of mania, which is indeed a divine gift." And just talking about the connections. So the connection, we're going to talk about this idea of otherness and the idea of it being a divine gift, the concept of being mixed or being touched by this entity. We're just going to call entity for now. And then the idea of, is it the idea of evolution and then rebirth, and also looking into the idea of the original state, which we're going to get into. I feel like I'm going to be giving a lecture with you all today. This is so exciting. This episode has made me so excited today. I'm ready to talk about Summer Hikaru died. So anyway, there's a lot going on, but basically in the context, Socrates' myth of cicadas is presented. The cicadas are talked about once being humans who in ancient times allowed the first muses, which connects up here to poetic musical passion, to enchant them into singing and dancing for so long that they stopped eating and died without noticing. The muses rewarded them with the gift of never needing food or sleep again, which is kind of what's happened to Hikaru. Hikaru has been inhabited by this entity that's given him the ability to basically be immortal, as far as we know. And of singing from birth to death. The task of the cicadas is to watch humans and report who honors the muses and who does not, which is kind of getting into this idea of the spirit and its concept of judgment, which we'll talk about in Nanuki, and the idea of judging and of who is deserving and who is not deserving, because apparently old Musura, she was not deserving. So we'll get into this. In the dialogue, Socrates affirms that nymphs and local divinities or spirits of place inhabit the countryside. They talk of muses and nature gods such as Pan. In addition, he indulges in extended exegesis in his own diamond, waxes lyrical, connecting divine inspiration to religion, poetry, art, and love, blah, blah, blah. All of which are informed and set in poignant relief by a cicada chorus. So, cicadas are pretty important in this episode, especially the end of the episode. So I want to just kind of break down where we're going with these 4 types of mania, because this series has a lot of mania going on in it, and we need to break into this. But we start out the episode with Hikaru seeming none the wiser that he's responsible, seemingly, for the death of this woman. Now, there's a lot brought into this scene because we go like into the dark. Like our characters, again, we talked last episode about there being like a connection between the light and the dark, and I'm sorry because Huckleberry's gonna want me to play with him during this time, so he's probably gonna be annoying. But we talked about light versus darkness, and a lot of times in stories, especially in anime, as I've noticed, like I think of Attack on Titan. In Attack on Titan, and this is not spoiling anything for the series, but in that series, Isayama, the author, does a really cool thing where anytime a character is being enlightened or given truths about a scenario, there is light that is featured. And that can be featured through a light turning on, a light bulb, a torch, a lantern. Some form of light envelops the scene, and that tells us, the audience, that we are learning a truth alongside the characters. And it's a very effective form of symbolism. In this episode, from this early on first scene where Yoshiki parks his bike and watches the police cars go by, and Hikaru stops with him, Hikaru seems none the wiser of what's going on, and Yoshiki seems kind of in the dark about what exactly is happening, but knows that something is up. Now, when they talk about the woman's death, Hikaru seems to have no idea what's going on and is like, oh, I've never seen a police car before, and like all this. So we, the audience, are kind of in this moment led to question, did Hikaru kill her? Or was it something else? I'm very curious in this series because the moment we saw the other being in the woods, I was like, oh, there's multiple spirits. There's multiple entities. There's multiple yokai. The one that's invaded Hikaru could be dangerous and out to kill everyone, or it could be a protector of the forest. We don't know which one it is. So I was like, oh, is it possible that some other entity has come down the mountain and is the actual villain, and Hikaru is going to get the blame? But then there's a woman in the grocery store talking, and so that kind of creates another layer of doubt on that theory. So, again, I don't want confirmation in the comments. I want to see how the show plays it out, but I'm like, oh, could it be that the entity, Anuki, that has inhabited Hikaru, could it be that he's going to get scapegoated for something that's maybe not entirely his fault? But then it's like, is Hikaru lying because the entity was in like all that discombobulated, like the cells and all that, and that's kind of what we saw when when Yoshiki stuck his hand up when he essentially fisted Hikaru, and we'll talk about that scene. But so I'm like, is Hikaru lying, or is Hikaru even understanding when he goes into the state that he kills people? Is Hikaru an unreliable narrator? Well, yes, he's established he's an unreliable narrator from episode 1, but it's interesting because he does feel kind of convincing in this scene. If he knows that he killed that woman and he's fully aware of that, he does a pretty good job of convincing Yoshiki that he has no idea. And the fact that they're in the dark makes me wonder if there's just casting doubt on this entire scene, or because we see the projected image of her screaming like a flashback on VHS tape film, which felt very Jujutsu Kaisen. I'm not opposed to it. But yeah, Matsura. Okay. Is he lying? And is he just keeping Yoshiki in the dark? That's a very real possibility. It leaves us up. Okay, there was a couple of, like, as Hikaru is smiling and says Matsura, there was a couple images that were flashing by us. Okay. And the images that flashed by us, like a videotape, we saw the cells. We saw an image of the body in front of the house. And we saw her eye, it looks like. Okay. And we saw a hand on the door. Then we saw this face that had broken glasses and all this hair and blood. And I'm like, is that the daughter that went missing? We don't know. We know that the old woman, and I'm going to put her over here. We know that Matsura had a daughter that went missing. Okay, so we know that that happened. All right. So, and maybe she was seeing that in the moment. Okay, and then there was a shot of a family. So there's a picture of her with the glasses. There's someone standing above her, and there's a little girl. So is that shot of the woman in the glasses, is that the daughter that we saw earlier on that was at the house that identified her, and then the younger daughter's the one that went missing? I don't know. And then we saw the blood vessels and all that. And then that was it. I don't know. Or is the person that killed Matsura someone that's mixed that we don't know of? There's a lot of mystery in this opening scene. So what do we do with that? But yeah, but in any case, Yoshiki doesn't exactly know what to make of this scene with Hikaru. I also like that his bangs are getting really long and everybody keeps talking about cutting his bangs. If he's going to cut his bangs or not, I don't know. But he's questioning whether he should do that or not. Or people are asking him to question whether he should do that or not. And I like the framing of him seeing Hikaru through the bangs. That's really cool. I like that. So anyway, the Tanaka, I freaking love Tanaka. I love Tanaka. Tanaka is an amazing character. He's got what looks like a bandaged up sword with talismans wrapped around it that's no doubt an exorcist weapon. He's got materials. He's got like archaeological scrolls and everything with him. He's playing K-pop, like little girl jams on his radio. I love Tanaka. He's so eccentric. He's so weird. He's got a weird scar thing on him that I don't know what that's going to end up being, but it's crazy. He is so interesting and weird and unique, and I love him. I love characters like Tanaka. I'm instantly like all on board in him. And plus, I have a soft spot for like exorcist characters because they're usually so layered and interesting. I'm like, yes, bring it here. I'm like their organization. I'm like, cool. I'm all about him. I want to know more about him. Mm-hmm. He also carries that very kind of, like, oh, who, me? I'm just a mentor figure who's secretly OP. That's the vibe that he gives off, and I'm kind of here for it. I want to know more about him. Him with the cigarette, and he seems so happy, and he's in dirty clothes. I'm all in for it. This OP is crazy. This OP is wild. Also, in love with the OP song. It's so good. These bodies that are CGI kind of look like the bodies that are all blood vessels and stuff like we saw at the end of the last episode. I'm curious. We don't know who the person that he's talking to is in the OP. Tanaka is, so that's interesting. I want to know. I'm not going to focus too much on the OP because I feel like some of the stuff in the OP is going to be kind of foreshadowy for later on. Although I am a bit worried about these classmates, the two girls and the guy, because I'm like, you guys are hanging out. And then in the OP, we got the little crooked spirit and everything. I don't know. I will say this. I said in the OP reaction, the entity that has taken over Hikaru has this, like, the blob feel of it. It reminds me of Princess Mononoke and the forest entity, like the forest deity, like the forest deity in Princess Mononoke. It reminds me of it. And part of Princess Mononoke was everybody was like, we got to kill this forest entity. And then it comes to find out, spoilers for Princess Mononoke, it's been around for like 20 years. How have you not seen it? But mild spoilers for Princess Mononoke. In that film, they try to kill the forest spirit, who turns out to be the protector of the forest, and you kind of need that for the forest to continue without being devoured by evil. So, will that be something that comes into term in this series? I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. But this series, this OP felt like Jujutsu Kaisen mixed with Yuri on Ice, mixed with I don't know what else, but I'm like just here for it. I love it so much. I love this OP. It's amazing. I'm so curious what we get with this series. All right, the summer Hikaru died. Episode 2 is called Suspicion. I'm going to be going through that OP, I'm sure, the next however many episodes we have. I also like Hikaru being like, should I cry during this line of lyrics? And the teacher's like, that seems overdramatic. So, they talk about the woman dying. The woman that they found that was dead in the village. That she committed suicide by stuffing her own fist down her throat. That's terrifying. Glad we didn't have to see that. That seems a bit creepy. What's interesting is that this one character, this one guy, he says that he feels like he should be, that he feels cursed. And they're talking about all this spooky stuff lately. The vibes between these classmates, these high school kids, feels a lot like Uzumaki. And if you've not watched Uzumaki, it's only 4 episodes. You can go check it on my channel. It just gives off that vibe of ominous, of just like, ooh, there's something creepy and spooky in the air. But again, it's in broad daylight, so it kind of feels a little different. So then, this guy says he might be cursed. I take the Eastgate Mountain path from Ashidori home. And he talks about how when he gets to the forest, he can't hardly see in front of him, and it's super scary. He's like, I can't even see into the woods. I just have to follow the path, and my eyes don't stray from it. And when I try to look up, my body freezes. Which, as Hikaru tells Yoshiki later on, he's like, you looked up and looked into the eyes of the spirit, and it was trying to latch onto you. So this kid probably inadvertently saved himself by just following the path and not looking up and getting possessed by the spirit. But he could sense something was wrong. I'm wondering if this village... We're going to use a different marker. I'm wondering if this village has a lot of clairvoyant people in it. And if, you know, we talked about it being a cult or being like an organization in itself. I don't know. You kind of have the symbolism of the people there because they're so used to the village and they've been there so long, they kind of get a sixth sense for how things might be out of place. It very much is giving me, I grew up in a small town. And so I kind of get this. But when you grow up in a small town, you're so used to everything and everything is very unchanging that when something is out of place, you immediately notice it. Like if you drive past the same houses every day and suddenly something's different, your mind kind of goes, oh, that's not like it usually is. Or that's out of place. And you kind of just notice it, right? So I kind of like the idea of the symbolism that the village is so knowing of itself that when something is out of place, like the feeling from the mountain disappearing, or now that dread is in the village itself, or something's out of place, the townspeople notice it because they're so used to the vibe of the town that when something's different, they pick up on it. I kind of like that. And it's, you know, you can translate it to being like a clairvoyance or a supernatural feeling, but it is kind of just an embellishment on a feeling. If you grow up in a small town, you notice when things change. So I think that's kind of cool. I like that. But anyway, the girls, our girl duo, Yukio and what's her name? What are their names? I'm going to get them in there. They're basically our lesbian duo, which I like them. And this guy is like, hey, why don't you walk me home? Now, whenever he's like, I want you to walk me home, at first I thought, oh, that's not good, because is Hikaru going to get jealous? And is he going to try to kill this kid? The OP suggests that these three are in danger. And I'm like, oh no. But I'm like, is he going to try to kill this kid out of jealousy? Because let's talk about some tropes. We're going to talk about some tropes over here. BL tropes. Gonna bring them up right here, y'all. BL tropes. The jealous boyfriend. The jealous boyfriend that wants no competition. That makes me worried about this guy. And I was like, is he going to get killed because Hikaru doesn't want any competition of Yoshiki's affections? But that doesn't seem where it's going, because he agrees to go with them. So I guess he gets that Yoshiki is not interested in the guy. So then Hikaru's like, oh, I'm going to go. And I was like, oh, you in danger, son. And the girls are like, oh, you'd never go before. Hikaru doesn't like horror movies. But we know Hikaru is dead. And so Hikaru's like, oh, I'm not fazed by those anymore. And Yoshiki's like, yep, he's not exactly the same as he was before, because it's not the old Hikaru. Again, the bangs frame Hikaru. And it almost looks like with each scene, the bangs getting longer and longer frames. What's interesting is the symbolism. His bangs are getting longer and longer, but what that's doing is it's cutting out everything except what he sees directly in front of him. So Yoshiki's getting tunnel visioned, and the only thing he sees in front of him is Hikaru. So slowly Yoshiki is blocking everything else out and only focusing on Hikaru, which is a very intentional move by the author to show that symbolism, and I am here for it. So yeah, it'll be Yoshiki, Yuki, and Asako, Yuki and Asako, and me, and Hikaru. So yeah, so Yuki and Asako are our two ladies. We have Yuki and Asako, which I'm like, these two ladies are fooling no one. The one girl, I don't know if she's Yuki or Asako, the girl that looks more athletic, she with the brown hair, she seems like she might have some spiritual inclinations, because I'm like, is her family mediums? Because she seems to have a different reaction to the creature in the woods than everybody else. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. She gets the most freaked out about the gunshot, and we'll talk about that later. But anyway, Tanaka showing up in his beat up minibus, like, to go see these guys with his hamster. I'm living. I love this guy's being like, you sure took your sweet time. He has like the dingy shirt on and everything, and the birthmark. He's like, let's get out of this heat and go inside. And we don't see what's under the glasses yet. I like that these guys hired him without the police or anyone knowing. So it is highly illegal that this man is here. Highly illegal that he's entering a crime scene to look at potentially where the body was. But they are kind of desperate and believe that they need some supernatural investigations going on. Interesting. And he has the crowbar. He has the damn crowbar. I'm like, what is he going to get with the crowbar? I thought he was going to pull back like another board and there'd be another monster there, but he is also like, be careful with my hamster's cage. He's like, the hamster's interesting, like his spiritual detection. It is really gross that the room is in disarray and there's like, it's kind of dingy from the start. And then he asks about Takada, who's the bigger guy, and says, how's your dad doing? And he's like, he won't come out of his room. He swears he's next on the chopping block. And then Tanaka laughs and says, I figured as much. And he's like, what are you doing? People are dying here. And then he's like, I reckon it might be because... he has like, it doesn't even Kansai Ben accent because it's chopping his words. That company of yours came trampling in. Oh no, that guy, the guy Takada did. He says, letting that ignorant corporation alter the land would have been an even bigger disaster if you ask me. But my company put a stop to it, so you should be thanking us right now. Okay, so we have two different organizations being talked about in this scene. Tanaka is saying that the village had a company that was in the mountain. It looked like they were logging, so we're just going to put logging right now. But they were in the mountain logging, and Tanaka is saying that my company that my company stopped that because he's like, you guys were idiots and were messing up the forest and you were getting the spirits all riled up. My company came in and put a stop to that so you didn't get anything else, riled up more than it would, and then you'd have even more problems on your hands. So he's like, you should be thanking us. So there's that going on behind the scenes. And then the one guy's like, company, huh? He's like, if we only knew who they were. So it almost feels like these two organizations are kind of like in a love-hate relationship where they kind of benefit from each other, but they also don't like each other. So that's interesting. And so apparently this guy, Takada, whoever his dad is involved in whatever Matsura was involved in. And he says, strange stuff has been happening all over the village lately. You already know the Endo's son went missing, right? Okay, so we have the Endo's son. Okay, and then we have the cicada that's being eaten by the ants, which is fascinating. Their ritual must have been a failure. Okay, so we're going to go back up this. So there's the idea of, we're going to put down, so the Endo family. So you have the Endo family and whatever the ritual was, the son went missing. My question is that they talk about the Endo family and their son, which I'm assuming that's Hikaru. I'm assuming that Kohei Endo is his dad and Hikaru Endo is him. So my thing is, do these guys in the village not know that Hikaru is still around and at school? We don't know that, but it seems like that. Now, the image of the cicada with its guts and all of the ants consuming it, I'm like, were they sacrificing their son? And that's why we see the cicada being eaten by ants and the ants are the village benefiting from it? I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what that symbolism means yet. But, which caused it to start acting up. So I don't know what that means. Or if the ritual involved like Hikaru going into the mountains. Okay, so we find out though that there's like a little skull, like a little shrunken head, which is creepy as hell, but the little shrunken head, I'm gonna put SH here, was to protect Hikaru. Okay, before he was possessed by, we think it's Nanuki, but we don't know for sure. Okay, we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about that when the flashback with the dad and Hikaru happens. But so was Hikaru sent up to the woods that weekend to perform this ritual like it was supposed to protect the village or something? And he brought the shrunken head to protect him during the ritual, but then did he slip and fall or something happened and he got hurt? And then that's when he reached out to get possessed by the one entity? We don't know. Interesting. But yeah, so they go in the woods. And the one girl seems excited. The other girl does not seem excited. They're like, yeah, this seems kind of spooky. And then so Yuki is the girl with the pigtails. And Yuki's the girl with the pigtails. And Asako is the one who seems like she might be spiritually in tuned. We'll see. Okay. Yuki does seem a bit scared. And then this one guy's like, I'm scared as hell. I loved the gag where it was the wall of text. And it was just like literally a gag. That was so cute. That was really adorable. I liked that a lot. That was fun. So yeah. So then we settle on that road for an unreasonable amount of time. That was really scary. I didn't like that at all. And if you notice, as they're walking through the woods, Hikaru has his eyes closed the whole time. I don't know if it's because he knows that there's spirits in the forest and you shouldn't look at him, or if he's trying to seem nonchalant or what. And they're like, nothing happened. And he's like, yeah, that was really ordinary. I love that it only took them like literally 10 seconds to get through and nothing happened. Okay. So meanwhile, we go back to the house of Matsura and it says all of these documents, Nanuki-sama. Okay. This lady saw something in her past. What's interesting is I don't know if Tanaka knows who Nanuki is. I figured he would know more, but he seems kind of in the dark about it. And he says she might have had a traumatic experience in the mountains as a child. And that's when she saw it. But all these guys, they don't seem to want to talk about it. They're keeping something from Tanaka. They're keeping something guarded and close to the vest and not telling Tanaka all the details, I feel. So they say that she used to be normal, but her daughter disappeared without a trace. And they're like, do you know her well? They don't want to talk about it. So the daughter disappeared. Nobody wants to talk about the daughter disappearing. That's suspicious. Why don't they want to talk about the daughter disappearing? Their eyes twitch. They don't want to talk about it. This lady strongly feared whatever lurked in the mountains. None of them want to say what it is. But the more she fears it, the more it's attracted to her. Okay. So now they go back through the forest. This time Hikaru is looking. And then they talk about, like, Yuki says that something bit her. And then that's when we see, like, there's a spirit, like a little fire, an essence of fire. And then we see, like, the cicada, its eyes glowing. And Yoshiki looks over and sees the creepy ass yokai with its head swinging from side to side like a praying mantis. That was creepy. That was really creepy. I didn't like that at all. Yeah, I would just be like, don't look at it. And Hikaru was like, oh no, you looked at it. That's not good. He said it's swinging towards me. And he's like, you saw it, didn't you? He's like, no, that's not good. So he decides he's going to eat it. And he's like, come here. Now, when he splits his cells to go after and eat whatever the spirit is, it sounds like a gunshot, and it causes Hikaru's nose to bleed because it's something beyond, I'm sure, what his physical body is capable of. And then as his nose bleeds and there's the pop, then we go back to Tanaka dropping a sugar cube into, like, some matcha tea. And like, why did we come to Mikasa's house all of a sudden? And he's like, well, the situation was worse than I thought. We needed a safer place. Apparently, whoever Mikasa is, which is not Takeda, but I guess it's maybe the short man that they're at his place, that they're at this temple and shrine, and he's like, I had to put up a barrier. So Tanaka is exorcist adjacent, at least, confirmed, right? So they're like, what? And then he just sits there and like swirls up the tea, which is so ridiculous. But yeah, he says, by the way, I visited the mountain this morning and I found something good up there. I like the little hamster seems to nod and he says, this thing. So they're like, that's the bag that Kohei always used. So the bag that Kohei always used had the shrunken head in it that seems like it would ward off spirits. Yeah, it used to be someone's head. And he's like, with these, most of the menaces wouldn't lay a finger on you. So my question is, with that, if this was meant to be an item to protect Hikaru, why didn't it work? Why did he end up nearly dying and getting possessed by the spirit? It was originally assumed for clearing out the mountain's impurity. And they're like, well, the impurity's gone. But maybe it's a bit of a stretch to give this little guy all of the credit. Interesting, especially after what happened with the granny. And he's like, it's come down from the mountain. I think it found a way to stay hidden while it lurks among us. So the question is what came down from the mountain and lurking with them, is it the entity that's possessing Hikaru, or is it something else? And Hikaru's spirit just happens to be there as well. We don't know. We as the audience are not given the information. Kohei was right all along. Interesting. And then we have the map here that has the label of there. And what does it say there? It says the village, which is Kubatachi, Udakari, and Kibogayama town. I'm like, what should we do? He's like, let me start digging around. And I was like, okay. So then Asako gets freaked out by the noise, grabs Yuki and runs. And meanwhile, Yoshiki's like, Hikaru, what did you do? And he's like, oh, I just got a nosebleed. And he's like, that was weird. And he said, that thing wanted to latch onto you, so I crushed it and ate it. He's like, they follow you because you look at them. Those guys are really lonely. You should only look at me. So then we take the next trope. So next BL trope is the idea of just look at me. So basically the idea of just, and I'm almost out of marker for this one. I think this might be their last stand. Just look and rely on me. Let me tell you, was I getting Heaven Official's blessing flashbacks of a certain king telling his would-be lover to just rely on me, just look at me, don't look at anybody else? Yes, I was. So basically what Hikaru is saying is the traditional BL trope of don't look at those other guys, don't worry about them, you look at me and I'll protect you. I'll keep you from harm. My dude. My dude! So yeah, I'm the only one that is allowed to latch onto you. Which we're going to talk about with the flashback. But essentially, Hikaru is saying that I'm going to be your only lover. Don't depend on anybody else. And Yoshi's like, what? And he's like, just don't look at him, okay? And he's like, if you see one, let me know. And he's like, well, quit stretching my shirt out. So then they catch up with the two girls. And Hikaru lies and says that he fell. And that was it. And they're like, we heard a loud pop, though. And he's like, well, maybe somebody fired a scare gun or something. And it was just, nothing happened. Now, Asako is like, is that what it sounded like to them? So I'm like, is Asako spiritually inclined? Is she related to an exorcist? Is she spiritually inclined and saw or heard something different, but doesn't want to say anything? She doesn't want to freak them out? Interesting. And that creepy feeling the forest was giving off is gone. Now, Hikaru looks back at Asako, and I'm like, does he suspect that she might be onto something and maybe knows more than she should? And then Hikaru looks back. Did they cancel each other out? Did whatever was in the forest and whatever attacked it cancel each other out? And then Hikaru looks back at Yoshiki, who's like, are you sure you're not hurt? And he's like, I don't even know what hurt feels like. And then he looks down. He's like, I don't even know what being hurt feels like, which would make sense because he's now inhabiting that body, so he probably doesn't know what being hurt feels like, and because he can only recall Hikaru's memories, but not his experiences, right? So pain would not be something that he would register, right? But then he looks down at the mole that's on Yoshiki's arm, and then he looks up at the moles on Yoshiki's neck, and then looks, and he's like, I don't gotta take him. He's gonna stick with me anyhow. Because then he looks, and okay, where his pocket is that spirit. So he says there, I don't have to take him. He's gonna stick with me anyhow. So is the spirit, is that what's latched on to Yoshiki? So has that spirit latched on to Yoshiki then? Because did Hikaru lie and say that he ate him and crushed him? But it's latching on to Yoshiki now? So what we don't know is, has this spirit latched onto Yoshiki? So is the idea of Yoshiki getting mixed related more to the spirit in the forest than it is to Hikaru? Or is it a combination of them? I don't know. And then Hikaru kind of just laughs at that and is like, and Yoshiki doesn't quite understand. He's like, I'll make sure that nothing steals him away. So I'm like, is Hikaru trying to get Yoshiki to be the same as him so that he stays with him? Or is he letting the entity be attached to Yoshiki so it will make them closer? I'm curious. I can't believe I have to wait a week until the next episode. That's dumb. I hate that. So then I love the sparkler and the drip, the little light from the sparkler as we go into the flashback with Hikaru looks like the little entity that possessed Hikaru. It looks exactly like it. I love it. It says, Hikaru, if you find someone you really like, you've got to marry her as soon as possible. And he's like, what happens if I don't? He's like, then Unuki-sama will drag her into the mountain. And he's like, it's an Indo family rule. We've got an agreement. It's not going to touch our family. So, with this, we're going to talk about the Indo family. So they have a rule. They have a rule that Unuki and no-nuki seem like two different things. So there's Unuki and no-nuki. Now, could they be two different entities that are split in two and one protects the forest and one tries to cause destruction and they like have this balance between one another? And now that Unuki has possessed Hikaru, no-nuki has come down to the mountains in search of it? I don't know. But Unuki won't harm the Indo family. Okay, we've got an agreement. It's not going to touch our family. So if you marry her, she'll be safe. And it says, why does it take people away? Because it's lonely, but it won't lay a hand on our family. So then there's the question of the ritual or whatever. Was Hikaru wanting to keep Yoshiki safe, and that's part of the ritual? I mean, here's the thing. If you want to talk about BL tropes and everything, there is the obvious trope of the fact that society in various parts of the world, unfortunately, does not want same-sex couples to have equal rights, such as marriage or being able to have a family or whatever. So, or being recognized even as partners. So Hikaru, the fact that he could have fallen in love with Yoshiki, he can't really marry Yoshiki, so how is he supposed to keep him safe? And did Hikaru wonder about that when all the stuff in the mountain was going down? Is that something he was thinking about? We don't know yet. But in this case, this could have been like the ultimate like boon for Hikaru and Yoshiki's relationship, because now if Unuki has possessed Hikaru, then it's also keeping the the Indo family safe, but is also Hikaru with Yoshiki, so that'll keep Yoshiki safe. I'm just thinking out loud here. It won't lay a hand on our family, but it takes others because instead it takes the one closest to you because it's lonely. But it's only a myth, though. Supposedly, allegedly, and it's lonely. And then we see the light go out. So there's the idea that this spirit was lonely and took the body of an Indo family member that it promised to keep safe and keep their family safe. So is it trying to take Yoshiki, or is it keeping them safe, or both? You know, we've got to think about that. And then we have the light coming back up. So then we cut to this sports closet, which again, I was getting Bloom Into You vibes. You better believe I was getting Bloom Into You vibes. All the BL and GL things happen in sports closets, you better believe. And so it seems, I wonder if they cut something out of the manga. Again, I have the first volume of the manga, so after season 1, I'm definitely going to look into it. But I wonder if they cut a scene out of why they got to the closet. But it seemed like Hikaru wanted to show Yoshiki what happened to the spirit. And he's like, here, I'll show you. And they went to the sports closet. Is this all a veiled reference to a sexual encounter? Why, yes, ladies and gentlemen, it very much is. So, yes, this is all a sexual encounter metaphor. He literally stuck his fingers up inside of Hikaru. You do with what you want with that. He literally stuck his hands up inside of Hikaru and he had a reaction. Do not tell me he did not. Because, yeah, Yoshiki's like, because Yoshiki, at this point, I'm like, no, Yoshiki was sexually attracted to Hikaru. There's no doubt about it. He was sexually attracted to Hikaru. And so this is definitely, and again, the bangs in the way. The bangs not showing his face, but then Hikaru being like, I want to show you that this, he's like, this feels kind of raunchy. How'd we end up like this? I'm like, it does feel raunchy because it is. He's like, the heck, dude? He's like, why are you asking me? This was your idea. He's like, I wanted you to know what's inside of me. I want you to know how I want to know how you crushed and ate that thing. What exactly did you do in that forest the other day? He's like, I'm going to show you. So what he shows him is that there's a giant slit in his stomach. And Yoshiki looks down, and I was kind of being like, did he get sexually aroused during this moment? And that's why we have that POV, but they don't, dwell too long on it. They do deliberately dwell down in his crotch. So I'm like, he was wearing black pants. So if he did get an erection, it'd be hard to kind of tell in that moment. But when he looks up, there is literally a slit in the middle of Hikaru's chest. Now, we could say a lot about this slit that looks kind of sexual. If you wanted to go that route, you could do that. But the fact that he stuck his hand up inside the slit and was getting to a spot that Hikaru found pleasurable. But then Hikaru's in the body of a male. So then, there's all of this discussion about gender and sex and everything in this one moment. And the fact that this is, Yoshiki is not sexually experienced and neither presumably is Hikaru. So this is like their first encounter and there's monsters involved. And I'm fascinated by it. I am fascinated about it. But he sees this opening and he's like, do you want to stick your hand in? Now, I want to establish something. By all attempts and purposes, when we talk about the woman later on in this scene, she's trying to dissuade Yoshiki by saying, oh, don't get too involved with Hikaru. You're going to end up getting mixed. You're going to end up getting tainted. It's all basically a sign of if you pursue this route, and I'm going to use this word with air quotes in the biggest degree, become homosexual, you're going to be getting into a lifestyle that is not normal, air quotes, and not healthy, air quotes. The thing is, I think Yoshiki, before he even met Hikaru, was already outside of what that woman in the grocery store would have defined as normal. And I think it ties to the fact of if you are queer, you don't choose that sexuality. You are born with it. It is innate within you. It's just the matter of you emerging, which we'll talk about the cicadas later on, emerging as a representation of yourself that's true. And so I feel like Yoshki's kind of messed up from the start. And I'm not saying he's messed up because he's gay. That's not it at all. But he has kind of a warped sense of things. Like, we see his home life, we see how he views, like, the fact that he saw Hikaru being a monster and was like, okay, would. I mean, like, that's literally it. So this woman's preconceived notion that him being around Hikaru and getting mixed is going to change him. I'm like, girl, he was already down for it before he stuck his hand up inside of Hikaru. So him getting mixed has nothing to do with how he already felt and was down for this situation happening. And I think it's a really cool commentary on how people who are queer, it's not something they chose or that they were pushed into or forced into. They were already ready to go. It's just the matter of when they were given the circumstance to let that be exposed. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating because he could have said, no, I don't want to stick my hand up inside of you. That's weird. He was all about it. He was ready to go. So he sticks his hand inside there, the vessels and everything. And he's like, this is weird. Yeah. And it feels very invasive. He's like, oh, it's something weird. It's just, he's like, how is it? And he says it feels like marinated raw chicken. I mean, if you stuck your hand up inside of someone, I imagine that's how it would feel. Perhaps. And he's like, it's cold. And then we just see the raw chicken, like the actual portrait, the actual picture of it. Like it just feels like guts, but it's cold because it's like a corpse, essentially. And he's like, you're kind of warm. I mean, Yoshiki is alive. And then there's the spark of the firework, the little flame, the flicker, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, he says it feels nice. It's been a while since I felt something alive inside of me. And he's reach up further. I mean, this essentially a metaphor of Hikaru getting fisted? I didn't think I was going to say that sentence today, but here we are. And when he reached up to the head and it just kept going up into where his brain would normally be, and he's like, yeah, that's the spot. I mean, this was a sexual encounter for sure. And he's like, does this feel good? It feels like a good pat on the head, which Yoshiki gives him later on. So this is all just a metaphor for a sexual encounter between the two of them. They both seem like they are consensually fine with this. So yeah, no one's ever touched me here before. I mean. So yeah, then there's a swirl of the cells. Now, it almost seems like it pulls Yoshiki in for a minute, like a corkscrew, and like it's pulling him in. And then we see Hikaru, before he was possessed, looking kind of sad, right? And that's it before Yoshiki pulls the hand out. So, did we tap into Hikaru in that moment? I don't know. Did we tap into the essence of Hikaru that's left? But yeah, he's like, did that scare you? And Yoshiki's like, what the hell? And he's like, come on, don't wipe your hand. Well. And you can tell that he's like, oh, my shirt. And then the slit is gone. He's like, take a free look if you want. Again, that's Yoshiki is sexually attracted to Hikaru, so this is indulging him a little bit. And I'm sure Yoshiki feels a little bit bad because he's like, there is Hikaru in front of me. His body is in front of me, but this entity is not Hikaru. So I'm sure Yoshiki feels a little bit guilty. Like, do I feel bad that I'm looking at this body and sexually wanting it, but I also know in my head it's not Hikaru, it's this other entity. So yeah, because he looks away kind of almost in shame, and he's like, what's the matter? And he slaps his hand away. Now, for all intents and purposes, Hikaru reacts very good to this. He's like, well, I'm sorry, you didn't like that. And that's when he gives him the head pat. So, on the one hand, Yoshiki doing the head pat is like, hurry up and button up, what are you, a caveman? That is Yoshiki's way of saying, no, it's not that I don't like men. I like men. I like staring at you. I just feel guilty that I'm staring at the body of my dead former friend that you're inhabiting and getting sexually aroused. So that's literally it. This scene is everything. I love it. And then Hikaru's like, well, I might be a caveman. And that makes Yoshiki laugh. Again, Yoshiki was not the wholesome innocent that this woman thought from the beginning. I am by and large convinced of that, right? So anyway, speaking of the lady, she notices Yoshiki at the counter, right? And so then there's this conversation. This is great. So again, I feel like in some respects, tying into the cicadas, we'll talk about this at the end of the episode, but Yoshiki has had kind of an awakening in this episode, an awakening that it's okay. I feel like Hikaru in this moment has shown Yoshiki that it's okay for him to indulge in his desires because Hikaru's all for it. He's like, oh, I like this. This is fine. It's totally okay. And Yoshiki's like, okay, I can do this with him. And there's no bad repercussions. So I feel like that awakening has happened. And also, you know, it could be the slight merging with a monster that's making this like anger and aggression kind of fester towards the surface. But this anger and aggression, I feel, has always been in Yoshiki. That's something I wanted to talk about because I feel like we got the flashback of the parents arguing, and Yoshiki had the stomach medicine, which we don't see on his bed now, the stomach medicine. So it very much feels like Yoshiki was denying a part of himself, and it was physically making him sick, denying who he is. It was physically making him ill. And meeting Hikaru in with this entity possessing him is letting Yoshiki come out of his shell, literally like a cicada, come out and be who he has wanted to be without fear. Because he's been afraid that if he admits to Hikaru that he likes him, Hikaru would reject them, and that would just make him feel heartbroken. And now that fear is slowly fading away. So the woman at the counter brings up his missing sister, which I'm like, she's like, the Yamazakis were worrying too, which this gossipy lady, like, that ain't none of her business. None of your business, woman. And I love just how grotesque it is. Like, he looks at her with her, like, pursed, like, chapped lips and, like, shaved face and the mole, saying she can't get up in the morning or some such. I'm like, that's none of her business, right? And then we see the flashing red light of the checkout. I'm like, the red light of the checkout matching the cop light, matching the red light of the monster. So good. And then she's like, well, waking up is hard for everybody, isn't it? Like, she's such a gossipy bitch. I'm like, shut up, mind your own business. And then I love the intercom, like, getting, like distorting the sound and making it, like, warped. Kaoru's a middle schooler. Don't let him spoil her, okay? Like, it's none of her business. And then she talks shit about the mom, saying the mom's from Tokyo. Maybe they got different parenting styles. Like, she's talking shit about the mom because she's an outsider from another place. I'm like, that is, like, rural 101 gossipy Nanya business. And Yoshi's getting kind of pissed about it. And you can see how mad he's getting just by the images of the red lights, of the perspective, of the distorted sound, of the tension here. Everyone's concerned, you know. It must be tough for you too. If you never need help, just ask. I thought for a moment, the way that they were building this up, he was going to attack her and that was going to get caught on camera. The way that it was like building up this tension, distorting everything. We don't get that. But it felt like this woman, because from the video, it doesn't look like she's doing anything. She's just ringing up his items and there's nothing that's the problem. It's when you're actually down on the floor with her and you see how she's gossiping and like riling him up with this bullshit that you kind of get the sense of. And I like that because it's portraying like what we know from what the outside perspective sees. And they can be two very different things. I love it. It's great. Are you still in the photography club? My son once got second place in his track and field event. Like, what does that have to do with anything? And Yoshiki, you better cut those bangs. I wonder if he will cut his bangs or if he'll just keep growing it out. I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know. So then as he's getting to his bike, I love the perspective of, we got to see like the chicken and the hand going up inside. Okay, there was something that grabbed him. Like when he was going, yeah, something grabbed his hand while it was inside. It was like a hand that looked like all these spiral things. What the fudge? I'm not going to pay too much attention to the ED because it showed like he had a mark on his arm in the ED that looked like where that thing grabbed him. So I don't know. I'm not going to focus too much more about it. We'll see when we get to the next episode. Yeah, we'll see. Okay. And then the chicken and everything. Curious. But she grabs his arm and says, you're getting close to something dangerous. Get away from it right now, or you'll get mixed. And then she says, it's hard to explain, but if you mix with that too much, you won't be human anymore. Which, again, could be a literal tie to if he gets too involved with Hikaru, he'll turn into a monster himself. Or demon himself, which, okay, but is also a very veiled reference to the fact that if you dabble too much if you dabble too much with those gay people, then you won't be a person anymore. You'll be one of them. And it's very othering, and it's very much like you're not gonna be one of us anymore. It's got that connotation to it, right? Which is interesting. And she's like, oh, don't be scared. I'm just a housewife that happened to pass by. But I'm not lying. That forbidden area inside the mountains near the village. I felt a terrible air wafting from there. For a while now. Something horrible. But recently it vanished all of a sudden. I've been wondering where it went. But I've been scared to death. But it's tagging along with you, isn't it? And he's like, why? Do you know something? She's like, no, not really. But one thing's for sure, you can't go on like this. I've never seen a case like this before. Interesting. And then he just kind of looks at her. And though I'm sure you have your reasons, and the reason is Hikaru, obviously. And so he gets her contact information, and then he thinks of the hand going back inside again of Hikaru, the flashing police sirens, Hikaru there, and then the cicada with the red eye, and then the red eye on Hikaru. But the red eye this time looked like it was with Yoshiki, and then him with the hand inside of Hikaru, and it seemed like there was like the lightning from before, him going up the head, and then the cicada like coming out of its shell and saying, stop it. And then he keeps hearing Yoshiki. Now, the thing is, the cicada was coming out of its shell and it died halfway, but then it shows him like giving the head pat and his name keeps being said. And they keep telling him to stop, but he's like, no. It's like the woman's telling him stop, like, don't love Hikaru, but he's like, too late. I love him. And then he opens his eyes up, and they're like, it's a secret. Which is this love between him and Hikaru is the secret. And he smiles at that. And then the cicada comes back up, and he falls asleep with the phone in his hand. No stomach medicine in sight, mind you. And we see the cicada burst open with the different blood vessels and everything. So my curiosity is, I wonder if there's two spirits. There's Unuki and Nonuki. If they are two different spirits, and one of them ends up possessing Hikaru, Unuki did. And Unuki had vowed to protect anybody that was the lover of the Endo family. And so in possessing Hikaru, it's protecting Yoshiki because they are the lover of one of the Endo family members. So I'm wondering if that is the case. And then Nonuki, I think that I could be wrong. I could be wrong. We will see what this series gives me. I don't want to know answers. The series is going to answer these questions for me. My personal theory is there's two spirits. That there was Nonuki and Unuki. The villagers are scared of Nonuki because Nonuki is a vengeful spirit, a spirit that harms people. And Unuki is a spirit that is lonely but protects the forest as long as you don't but it will try to latch on to you if you get too close because it's a lonely spirit, and this one's destructive. So I wonder if Unuki attached itself to Hikaru because it was lonely and Hikaru opened itself up to get possessed, but because of the family agreement, it's not going to harm Yoshiki. It's actually going to protect them because they're the lover of Hikaru. And then I wonder if Nonuki, I don't know if Nonuki is the spirit that's come down and killed the woman, or if that's Unuki and we're just being led astray. Or if Nonuki has possessed Yoshiki now, and these two spirits are going to be together through these two boys, or what we're doing with that. I don't know. But this episode definitely felt like Yoshiki having an awakening of, oh, I loved Hikaru when he was alive, and now I have a second chance to live out that love for him through this spirit that's taken his body. Now, is that got layers of yes, it does, But it's taking all these BL tropes and applying them to like monsters and potential like possession and things. And I'm like, yes, I love all of this. Tanaka is interesting. I want to know what the heck he's doing. Asako is interesting. I want to know what her deal is. I want to know if Nonuki and Unuki are the same being or if they are separate, and if Hikaru knows that he's murdering people or if it's not even him. I have lots of theories. I have lots of questions. And I've talked for this series about this episode for an hour and 10 minutes. So, but before we get off, so this thing about the 4 stages of mania, the 4 kinds of mania, we have the prophetic, mediumship, mantic. So to me, that prophetic kind of ties to maybe Asako, ties to maybe the idea of these spirits, about maybe Tanaka, and like, oh, something's gonna happen if you hurt the spirits, they're gonna come down and do something. So like tying to the Indo family tradition, like there's something about that with the madness, that they're trying to like predict when the madness will happen or what'll happen with it. We tie that to the lady at the end of this episode that was warning him like, oh, you'll get mixed if you stay too long with the spirits. That all seems to be tied to that kind of mania. Then you have the cathartic, which is the ritual trance or telistic. And the cathartic you can tie to the ritual of the hamster detecting spirituality signals or whatever it's doing and why Tanaka's bringing it with him. You can tie it to the Indo family ritual that apparently failed, and that's why this entity's come down from the mountain. There's that. So maybe the ritual was supposed to get Unuki to listen to the Indo family and it failed. I don't know. But then you have the poetic or the musical, the passion, the muses, and that's tied to our whole thing with the cicadas and the idea of the muses. So Yoshiki is kind of like Hikaru's muse, and Hikaru is kind of Yoshiki's muse, and the whole idea of them evolving their relationship with the cicada metaphor is all tied into that. And then there's obviously erotic, passionate love. That whole locker scene is essentially that. And then the very end. But, I mean, the fact that Yoshiki went to bed without his stomach medicine and was smiling thinking about Hikaru is something. I hate that I have to wait a week. This sucks. I don't want to wait a week. Bleh. But there's no other episode, so boo. I was like, I thought there was 3. Netflix had 3 on here, but one of them was the trailer, and I was like, that sucks. So I'm gonna have to wait now, but that's okay. You all are waiting too. So I'm excited to hear your comments down below. Please no spoilers, as you all know, but I'm excited to hear your thoughts about cicadas. In any case, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yes, I'll be back very soon with more of the summer Hikaru died. Bye.